loneliness on the spiritual path or being alone. I get a picture of of a dog who is dying and knows that he or she is dying and goes in under the stairs in the house and dies there alone. I don't remember where I got that from. I think I heard it like from a store or something, but it has for some reason stuck with me, and I guess that's the thing, that we are born alone. And I mean, even though there are people there, we're not sharing our world with anyone, right? It is just we ourselves in our own experience of consciousness. There's this philosophical concept called solipsism, similar to idealism, that the only thing that is really real is our own consciousness, our own experience. We don't even know if the people around us are real. If we speak to someone, they might seem, like they have a consciousness of their own, but how do we know that they're not, NPCs, if they're just zombies basically walking around? How could we know? There's no way of knowing. There's no way of knowing what another person's actual experience is, except for asking them, but that doesn't give us their own experience. And likewise, when we are born, even though there is at least one person there that is somewhat sharing our experience, at least in the physical environment, there's no one there sharing our own actual experience of beingness, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And the same is also true, of course, throughout our whole lives, as well as the end of it, the end of our life. I guess it's different for different people, but I just found it interesting to ponder why the dog goes in under. Why doesn't he or she want to be around other people? I think some people do like that. Some people do want to be around other people at the point of death. Yet I think it's also as a metaphor for just being alone. Even though there are other people there, we are wondering, however you think about death, because everything has to do with death in the end, right? Like Freud famously said that, well, I don't know what he said, like as a quote, but he often spoke about death and how everything we do is, avoiding death. We can easily see that, at least theoretically. I don't know if it's, provable, but all these things that we do during days and throughout our whole lives, we just run around. We, of course, do good things. We do nice things. We are, they're good and bad, but in essence, a lot of it is what the Buddhists call grasping and aversion. We grasp for things, and we try to avoid things that we don't like. And what is the thing that we most desperately don't like? Yeah, our own perilous state, our own our own end, which we are just closing in on more and more each day. It is unavoidable. Yet, yeah, and we try to avoid it. So we do things. So we neglect it. We focus on other things, which is fine, to each their own. But there's a reason, I think, why many of the spiritual traditions doesn't shy away from that. They instead wants us to embrace death, embrace the fact that it is ending. This consciousness, or maybe this conscious experience, at least, this phenomena that we are experiencing, this world, this I. So the I, the egoic self, shall we say, the experience of being someone, and also the experience of a world. Just as a dream at night ends, just as a dream at night has, usually at least, has a person there, which you are identified as. You believe you are a person in that dream, or a thing, or an animal, something. Your consciousness is localized to an organism of some kind, usually someone sort of like yourself, a dream character who you think you are. And then there's a dream world. It could be different from this normal waking state dream world, but it's a dream world. Both the person, the character that you think you are, as well as the world, will soon end, though, in the dream, that is. It's a matter of maybe seconds or minutes, or if it's a really long dream, maybe an hour or something. But it ends. And then there's a new dream. Or you wake up, or whatever. Maybe you go into deep dreamless sleep, and there's no dreaming there at all. No localized self, no subjective, maybe there's a subjective experience, but there's no individual self there, as it is in the dream world and as it is in the waking state. The person that you are right now, the individual experience, the experience of the individual as well as the world, ends every night. It dies. It goes into nirvana. It's called cessation, that is. And we die. We go into a dream world. And we are reborn as a new identity, and in a new world, which is also just a matter of seconds before it's going to end too. And that is evaporated. Nothing, no world, no person, no nothing, just pure consciousness, actually. So the pure consciousness is what the traditions say is what we really are, if there is something that we can say that we really are. That is pure awareness, pure consciousness, Brahman, the self, whatever name you want to give it. Of course, we are also everything that we experience. So in the dream at night, it is obvious that we are what we experience, theoretically at least, because everything is, everyone, I guess, or maybe not everyone, but even from the materialistic point of view, our dreams are just a projection of our minds or brains. So in that sense, we are that. We are that. We are just fooling ourselves into believing that there is a world there, and that there are persons, and that we are there too, and that we are one of those persons in that dream. What the traditions maintain is that is true for the waking state as well. It is also like a dream. It is also a projection of the mind. Maybe we could speak about the projection of the universal mind rather than the individual mind projecting the dream. Either way, it's somewhat like a dream. It's a projection again. and we are mistakenly believing in both the world and our identification with the self, with the small self, that is. And the way out of it is to identify with the big self. But speaking about aloneness, which was the topic for the day, yeah, there's an aloneness there for sure. Solipsism is basically solo, being alone. Oneness, what can that possibly mean other than being one? And if you're only one, who else is there? There's no one else there. There's only you. And you can even have that exact experience. I've had it a couple of times. To me, it hasn't been good. I didn't enjoy it at all. What I mean is, I think you can. I've heard people speaking about having that experience on a multitude of occasions, and it becomes less and less, hurtful. It doesn't. But to me, having the realization, not intellectually, which no real, or at least to me, real spirituality is about. It's never about intellectual understanding. Of course, there's a place for it. There's definitely a place to understand, to think. You can do whatever, you can have just intellectual understanding. But what the mystical traditions speak about, I mean, Sufism within Islam, Christian mysticism, Zen Buddhism, or all kinds of, Rupert Spira, these contemporary quote-unquote mystics or non-dual teachers, whatever you want to call them, they are speaking out of, most of them at least, I hope, out of direct experience. And it's not then we can make inferences from that and have theories, what is consciousness, where is it, what happens when we die, and all those things. Yet no one really knows, right? And because it hasn't happened to them. And that's what I mean with direct experience. So my own experience have on a multitude, or not a multitude, but a couple of occasions, I've rendered the world without the individual self and without the world, the phenomenal world. And I mean, even right now, my experience of being an individual self is not there anymore. It's there to some extent, I guess. I have the experience of having a body, I have thoughts and those things, but the identification disappeared a number of years ago. And it was a big shift in what you could call identity, which has remained. And my intuitive sense of the world is that I am this very experience, this very world. This is me. Which may sound, psychotic, but I'm functional, so it isn't. But then you can go, in different types of states, I would say. At least that has happened to me, that I go into where this world disappears. Again, it happens every night. So, and if you're able to, which very few of us are, able to remain conscious throughout dreamless sleep, and NREM, non-REM sleep stages, NREM 3 and NREM 4, whatever, you will have an experience of no world and no individual self. You can have that too, of course, in this waking state in a way, but there's more of an intuition of it. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but the aloneness, the aloneness. So going into that in the waking state, going in a deep state, almost like a trance. I don't know how to explain it. There is possible. It is possible to have the experience of nothing. Yeah, I think I've said it like 10 times. I'm sorry. Maybe should press like to double speed or something when I'm talking. Anyway, having no self and no world, everything is disappearing. So there's only the I, the big self, which is present in deep dreamless sleep too. Just this moment, but nothing is here. So you are totally alone because there's nothing here. There's no trees, no people, no, not even the character that you used to be or believe that you were. And to me, those experiences, again, I didn't enjoy them. From that perspective, I felt most of the times that, I'd rather just go back into illusion. I'd rather have, this Maya experience and believing that there are other people here, because then at least I'm not alone. At least I'm not alone. That's also one of the explanations to why we have a world at all. There's of course the Big Bang theory and different types of physical explanations of how the world came to be. But from a spiritual perspective, there are some stories that goes along the lines as being in that state, basically, that I just spoke about, being alone, being undifferentiated, nothing, pure emptiness, pure existence, nothing. And also alone, not a lot happening. So why not create something? And if you want to create it and really have a sense of someone else there, you also need to believe it. You can't just create a world and go around interacting with people. Or I mean, you could do that too, but it becomes much more enticing and engaging if you forget that you are alone, that you created this. It becomes much more of an interesting drama, shall we say? Just as watching a movie, if you're continuously thinking or not believing in it, not believing in the drama, you're not immersed in it. We tend not to find it too interesting. We want to believe in the drama. We want to believe in the world, and I think that's the same. That is the same story. So we need to forget who we are, which is the creation story from a lot of these spiritual traditions. So we create this world just as like we create a dream at night. So it's nothing special, really. It sounds like, there's nothing, and there's suddenly some big thing. But you do this every night. There's a new world there and a new individual self and new people. It's easy. And even though it's a nightmare, when it is a nightmare, we feel like, no, I don't want this. I don't want to be in this nightmare. But it's still better, I would say, than being totally alone. And the same is true for this world. I've had that because I've had that experience a couple of times, and I don't know if it's true for other people. I think I heard someone speaking about to the effect that getting more familiar with that state, sort of, maybe you habituated to it to a certain extent, and it becomes less scary, maybe. But for me, every time that I went there to the great aloneness, yeah, I had, yeah, I just really enjoyed coming back from it. And, let's forget about it. Let's just, I'd be happy to have all sorts of problems and difficulties and, in my daily life. There's a nothing compared to the great aloneness. Literally nothing. Because the great aloneness is literally nothing. Yeah, so that's one way of thinking about, or how I think about loneliness on the spiritual and human path. I don't know if that is something that we intuitively intuit and run from. Maybe. It is also, though, a problem running from things like that because we create suffering in our delusion or illusion too. So there's this, we want to have the cake and eat it too. We don't want suffering from the human drama, but the way out of it is waking up from that dream or that illusion, and waking up from that illusion entails being one and being alone. So it's a double-edged sword in a way. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. And I don't know if to me that explains why we are living like this, at least at a certain level, or from a somewhat theoretical point of view, could be understood in this from this perspective. Who want to be alone? Wouldn't most people rather have something rather than nothing? Even it's abusive relationships, shall we say, or yeah, just bad circumstances in general that we are suffering from. And of course, when it becomes bad enough, we want to move away from it. So we have this grasping and aversion. So we try to avoid those things, of course. It's also just the human mind, or the animal human mind, that has evolved throughout evolution. We just naturally do these things. I don't know if there's a middle ground, maybe the middle way that the Buddha spoke about, in which we wake up from some of the illusion, the idea of the separate self, or the identification with the separate self, because that it helps a lot. It helps a lot with being worried, being overwhelmed or whatnot, because you just don't care that much. Basically, that is my experience, at least. And but you don't want to go too. I don't. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't really know. It may be that I'm not spiritually evolved enough, but it's like there's no way out of it. I guess that's one of the lessons I've learned, for good or bad. There's no way really out of suffering. There is no suffering. We wake up, but waking up from the illusion is, on certain levels and in a relative sense, it helps us a lot. We get rid of a lot of anxiety and worry that egoic thinking mind creates for us. That's true. Yet we also become alone in a way that we are not before before that happens. There's an aloneness that can happen, like this is the aloneness on the spiritual path. There are different kinds of aloneness that occurs, of course. There's the aloneness of being on the spiritual path, and no one else in society or in your friend circle cares about it. Maybe all your friends has deserted you because you're weird or different. Those are also, you know, ways in which we experience loneliness. Having different ideas, having different opinions, values, and just living a different life than the normal life, maybe. Some people live a very normal, quote, normal life and still walk this spiritual path and have this deep spiritual journeying and doing spiritual practice. That's the whole spectrum of people. But going deep into spirituality, going deep into who you are, basically, which is the foundation of, I don't want to use it so value laden, but what I see as true, authentic spirituality is getting to the heart of who you are. What is this? What is this that we are experiencing right now? And who are you? Those are the two main questions to answer. Not in a theoretical way, not in an intellectual way, but in actual experience. And we do that through spiritual practices, not through reading, although that can be helpful of course, in some ways. But walking down that path when there's no one else there, now we have the internet and we have a lot of more, it's easier to get connected to other people who are interested in those same things. But even then, when we have these experiences, it's just like being born. We are alone in them. There's no one else there. We are alone. It can be really helpful, for sure, to have people who have had similar experiences around you, for example, or a guide or a spiritual teacher. That is really helpful, because you can share some of that field of being with them, which you are not able to with maybe some other people in your surrounding. Yet in the end, even they are illusory. Yeah, there's nothing there. If you meet the Buddha on the road, you kill him, like they say. What does that mean? Well, that means that, there's no illusion, there's no Buddha, there's nothing. There is nothing there in the end. And that is just, for the human thinking mind at least, not a great experience, not a great revelation or to have. I imagine, to a certain extent, life becomes easy from that perspective, because you see that you have it pretty good, even though you're suffering in many ways. Having nothing is worse, right? Having this whole world ripped away from you, which is spiritual awakening, in a sense, in a nutshell, even maybe. To die, and and in doing that, becoming alone and living alone in in a newfound aloneness, I guess, with a new peace that follows it. So there's a peace as well as an aloneness, and there's also, I guess, humility. I hope I hope there's some humility. I think that can happen, at least for some people. And there's a great compassion that can also arise from that experience, or which is not just an experience in a point of time, but is the actual reality of your very being from moment to moment. And yeah, then there's all these more maybe relative types of aloneness. I didn't really get into that. We can feel like we don't have any friends, or it could be a fact that we don't have any friends. I touched on it. Walking the spiritual path can often lead to having less friendships, and it's very differently how we are to as far as I see it anyway. Just as people enjoy chocolate or basketball or something, some people have a lot of need for friends. I mean, most people tend to have a need for some sort of companionship or having some people in your life, and we see that human beings in general tend to enjoy that. We even see, statistically, that these blue zones of who lives the longest, they tend to have these tight-knit communities, and yeah, seems to be good for you basically, and both in terms of lifespan, but also in and hence psychological well-being. But it's on a spectrum, of course. Some people aren't that much in need of it, whereas others are much more of it. And I would say that it's sometimes a sort of spiritual bypass, maybe, to think that your need for others is just egoic drive. I mean, to some extent, maybe, but you could as well see it as just a preference, just like you enjoy some type of food, for example, or you enjoy working out, and not doing that makes you feel worse. So, nothing wrong with it. Yeah, I think though that touching into the great aloneness, for better or worse, helps with all these other types of relative lonelinesses. It's just that touching that, um, again, it's a double-edged sword. At least to me, it is. You can't put toothpaste back in the, what do you call it, the jar, in the toothpaste. Yeah, I don't know the English word for it. So we wake up, we realize we're alone, and through that we become less alone in a relative sense, but more alone in an absolute sense. Yeah, it's aloneness, however you slice it. That's just the way of of life, and that makes us can make us makes us at least somewhat humorous, somewhat yeah, entice some sort of humility, hopefully, compassion, love for ourselves, for our world. Yeah, the love for the world may increase through that experience, or through having that experience, feeling into that um, truth, or however we want to think about it or experience it. Jesus Christ, my English is just off the cusp in a, in a negative way. Yeah, so those were some thoughts about loneliness on the spiritual human path. Thank you for listening.